Hello, good afternoon, good morning. Rob Moroto. We're live officially
Hello.
for our semi-regular real estate Q&A show. Let's just give it a minute for people to come on if they're watching.
Of
And
course.
let's
Please do join
see,
us.
I'm here with, let's get the names up there, robmoroto.com. I'm Ron. I'm with the Photomatics team. And you can, I'm just kind of doing this slowly to see if people come on and join us. In the meantime, if you're watching this later, you can go to hdrsoft.com/learn, finding out about if you're interested in HDR. Maybe we're afraid to ask. We also have Facebook group. It's still pretty new. Well, it's not that new anymore. We have people joining all the time. It's building up, and you can still get in there and ask questions and shape what's going on there. We started doing our live Q&A shows when the quarantine was going to last for 2 weeks. We thought we would do a couple of shows just for fun, just to do something while we're in. And then
Just for
now
two
it's
weeks
9
though.
months
Yeah.
later. But one of the things we did then was created this page that you see there. You don't have to remember that link. Just go to hdrsoft.com. On the top, there's one of those "What's going on for COVID" links, and that includes a lot of learning material for anyone who wants to try out bracketing HDR. There's even a free license for Photomatics Essentials there. That's the Essentials version of Photomatics that really has everything you need, at least to get started and try it out. Yeah. So real estate Q&A, if anybody who's watching has questions, we are here for that. I thought what we would do, usually we come here with one subject that we go over anyway, but I thought this one would be, well, like everybody, it's the end of the year. It's an unusual year. Thought we'd kind of
Yeah.
just anybody could go over any like that things to lament or things that went well. I know a lot of people launched their real estate photography business this year because it's something that was it's active, and maybe ideas for next year. So I'd invite. Rob Moroto here is always has the best advice on this kind of stuff. I like to ask him questions, but we invite anybody watching to let us know what your experience is too.
Yeah.
So how about you, Rob? How's it going?
Good. Good.
What's your end of the year summary?
It's been a strange year, but I think this is the year that we really have had to focus on what is important in our lives in all sorts of factors.
In ways we
And
haven't for years, right?
well, exactly. And from COVID to working from home, being with your being in isolation with your families for so much longer, and as well also with this whole with all the things that have come up with the election and all the different
Yeah.
things that we never thought about. Like, let's face it, until I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, "Well, there's thank God Trump's gone." And I said, "Well, you know what? No, let's think about this one way. Before that, we were in a place where everything was very peaceful and everyone was getting along, and to the most part, and then a lot of the issues were sort of being ignored. Well, as soon as we had him on, everyone started talking about all the issues because they were front and center again, and so people talked more, and I think that was fantastic. And then we get into COVID, and people are stuck at home now. They have to talk with their family, the people that they live with. They have to talk more with the people that they work with. They can't just get away anymore. We actually have to resolve being part of society. And I thought that was really interesting. And recently, I just did an interview with Alex Schultz from
Yeah, photography
Photography
talk, right?
Talks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was asking me all these questions like, well, what are your biggest regrets? And what's the advice that you have for everyone out there starting? And the biggest thing the biggest theme that we touched on was that It's about people. So like the biggest regrets I have are the regrets of, who did I not get along with? What did I do that I could have done better to help somebody else out?
Hmm.
And what is my advice for people getting into this business? And strangely enough, my best piece of advice that I had was to smile more while you're on site. Because what people forget is that we as photographers, yes, we do photography. So it matters if we do really good photography, but it also matters how we do it. So it's like going to a restaurant, right? Like a high-end restaurant. Doesn't matter how good the food is. If your waiter's a dick, you're going to give that restaurant a 1-star review and you're
Yeah.
never going to go back again.
Yeah.
And so we're the same way. We're a service industry. We need to be that really great waiter that also brings out a really great dish.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can't do both, then we're sunk. And that's
And just to throw that in there, especially if you're actually I come from that business, by the way, the restaurant business, but if you're a great waiter or a great photographer, you're not going to be successful 100% of the time. There's going to be a time where something went wrong. So as a photographer, maybe your results of this particular property are not perfect because it was difficult and you weren't up to the challenge that day. And you're going to need that where they really like you anyway. And
exactly.
that's going to be important. And because we can think that we're going to do everything the best all the time, but that's just not the case. And in real estate photography, frankly, it isn't possible all the time to make something spectacular. So I love that. I love that advice too, is just don't forget that we're in the service industry because I agree. I used to get asked in interviews for restaurant management jobs. Would you ever go back to a place that had the best food in the world, but had horrible service? And no,
No, like you can screw up
with one exception.
like, but as long as you've got the right attitude going forward to try and fix the problems, you're going to succeed. Like, even today I was on a call with one of my clients, and one of my photographers was out, and he shot an entire house, and then he forgot to actually shoot a part of the kitchen that showed where the fridge and the double wall oven was. And so I said, I called him and said, hey, I'm really sorry. That's completely our fault. Let us go back. Let us try and fix this. By the way, what can we do for not only him as the realtor, but what can we do for the homeowner? Because now we're inconveniencing the homeowner, right? We have to go back into their home. They have to clean up again. They have to put everything away again. They have to take all the little fridge magnets off again. So we are actually inconveniencing the homeowner, which is his client.
Right.
And
It's on him.
Yeah, and by default, it's also our client, because we are in this industry where if we think of ourselves as, we're a supplier and the realtor is the client, you're wrong. The realtor is not your client. The home seller is the client. Your realtor is your partner that you are working with to sell that house. And unless you start thinking about it that way, you're never going to succeed, because the key to the success is making sure that the realtor is able to use you as a tool, as a team and a partner, to then get more listings. You can't do your job unless the realtor has listings, and the realtor can't do it unless they get listings. So you're a partnership, and you got to think about it that way.
I like it. Hey, see, we have people from different places in the world coming on. I'm guessing Paulo's in Brazil or Portugal. I don't know. And then Brazil. And Pete De Palma mentioned that there's maybe a missing link. Shoot, I wish I were more Facebook savvy, because I felt like I put the links around, and so if I'm quiet for a while, I'm probably posting a link here and there. But appreciate that, Pete. Glenn asks about processing multiple shots, and I think I know your question, Glenn, because Moonlight. That's a joke. I've been very involved in the support for Photomatics, and we get questions about that. This should be just a situation where go and download the latest version, 6.2 point something, and it has a fix, because there was a. Can show the process. We can show you the process of blending several sets. Yes, in a second. had some issues with the numbers being out of sequence and then images blended incorrectly. So if it's a software issue, there was a thing about numbering 0 through 9 versus 10 and up. It was a funny thing. And that was a bug that got fixed not too long ago, maybe like a year. But anyway, download the latest version to make sure it's not that. If you still have them out of order, then it's just a matter of having either one extra image thrown in there somewhere that doesn't belong, or in fact,
it's funny. I have an issue every once in a while where I'll be doing 5 brackets, and then for some reason, I'll miss a shot. My camera will skip a shot, or the other one that happens to me is I get to the end of a folder. So when I reset some of my cameras, I forget to reset the numbering when I create a new folder. And so what happens is that after a while, when you get up to 999, it resets and goes to 0.
Yeah.
And so if you put everything in and you go 991, 992, all the way up, and then it goes 0, 0001, all of a sudden, if you think about the order that it pulls it up in Photomatix, it puts it the other way around and screws it all up. And so
that could be, it went from your odometer went back to 0, could be, but exactly. most likely it's just that, hey, by the way, in the comments, can you just let us know, make sure that Rob and I sound about the same volume? I heard, a lot of times we've been one of us loud and one of us soft. Just let us know if that sounds all right. Okay, so if you're having any out of sequence, Rob's one thing mentioned the software update, just make sure that's right. And the other things is if there's just one random one thrown in there, then it can throw the complete folder off. And that's if you're using one whole folder. So I shared my screen. Let's make it as big as I can on this system. There we go. And I'm trying to make more space on here and clear away things. So if you are using this first one here under bracket selection, merge 3 at a time or 5 at a time or whatever you're using, and there's just one thrown in, it doesn't belong, it could mess up the whole thing. Maybe you took shots and it didn't work right, so you took more and then it's just in there. That could be it. Otherwise, you can use advanced selection here, which gives you all these options where Photomatix will detect which ones belong together. So as long as you're using bracketing, so the bracketing goes snap, 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 right in a row with no time in between the images, then you can set it to detect that, and then it would ignore. If there's just a random one in there, it would get ignored. So you could go to this advanced selection one if you're not too sure. So there are a few options there. If you continue to have any trouble, hey, support@hdrsoft.com will answer you. Okay. So that's good for that, I think.
We got a question here from Hark. What's the Facebook link? And he looks like he's on YouTube.
So well, if you're on YouTube, you're good. You can be on. It should be the same, but let me send it anyway. I believe because you can go to you can go here to Facebook HDR Soft Live. You can use that link.
Okay.
If anybody wants to pop on and ask a question live, you can do that.
Oh, here's a question.
That link is here, going in the comments now.
There's a great question here right after Hark, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna.
What's the name? And I'll pop it up.
Well, that's the thing that I'm terrible at names, so I'm gonna butcher this. It's Guilherme.
Oh, that's going to be like a Portuguese version of Guillermo. That you can call him Bill if you want.
I'm so sorry. I'm so terrible.
Spanish and Portuguese speakers will understand. I think I got it right anyway. Okay. That's William in Portuguese, I believe. Guillermo.
Oh, okay.
Guillermo.
So here we go. So how much of the room is necessary to show? Because wide-angle lenses distort a lot, even correcting in Lightroom. It seems that a common belief is the more you show, the better. Do you believe that too? I say no. I've
had clients that say yes, so we can have a debate if you want.
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing. If you look at the camera right now, If I zoom in like this, notice how all of a sudden my ears are gone completely. If I come back, then, oh, look, my ears are back. As you get closer to your lens, you're going to get more distortion and it's going to look worse. So the key that I say to all my photographers is step back as far as you can and then zoom in and get all the important parts of the room. And even that last like 2 inches of space is going to make a huge difference. And that's why for a lot of us, I actually don't have a camera that I can show you here. We currently, our standard camera that we use for all of our staff is the Canon EOS RP or the Canon 6D Mark II. And the reason for those is that they have the flip out screen that flips out to the side. So we can actually take the camera, put it right up against the wall and shoot into the room. And so we get rid of the space that's necessary for, camera, putting your head behind it. Yeah, we don't need to put our heads behind because we got that flip screen. This here is the old 6D, so we can't do that. Or the other thing that we used to do with the 6D was we tethered this to our phones, and then we were able to snap the pictures from this using our triggering it from our phones, and that allowed us again to take the camera and step it back further. So
I was gonna, as long as we're showing solutions for that, since I have it right here, Cam Ranger.
Yeah, Cam Ranger works
which,
as well.
Which has its problems, frankly. I have I spend most of my time reconnecting it than more than shooting. But and this is the old original version. Hopefully, it's gotten better. But anyway, another option: modern cameras, you can tether it to your phone, which is not
fantastic.
Well, I think it's a little clunky because again, you're constantly connecting and reconnecting and using the phone for multiple things. But it's definitely a good solution for what you have, and most of us already have it. And then these things are good. And then most of the ones too, I just got one that has a flip out screen as well for that reason. So a few options there. Good.
Yeah, but definitely. And then the other piece of advice that I have is move your camera first, then put your head behind it. What I find a lot of photographers doing is that they do this where they grab their camera, they step back and they move back as far as they can, and then their back hits the wall, and then they stop. And so from the back of the wall to the camera, there's probably around 1.5 feet of wasted space. So move your camera first as far back as you can, and then start your composition.
So you're saying, so I was getting a little distracted with a couple things, but you're saying that if you, rather than going ultra wide, like 10 millimeters or 12,
yeah,
stick to, what do you have there, a 16, if I can recall?
Typically, now we're using 16 to, well, we've got 16 to 35s as our standard, and then we also carry around a 12 to 24, because the 12 to 24, you need that when you're in a position where you've got a small powder room, where you've got the door, you got your toilet, and then you got your sink, right?
Yeah.
So for that, if you're shooting with for a magazine or something like that, it's perfectly fine to go vertical, but for MLS, for realtors, all their shots on MLS are going to be horizontal. They're going to be portraits, landscape. So to get a perfectly vertical shot of a bathroom like that, you have to shoot it wide so that it captures all of that. And on the sides, of course, we've got a little bit of wall, we got a little bit of door, and that's fine. I don't mind a blank wall being distorted, because you're not going to see that difference. But for everything else, yeah, we stick within the 16 to 35 range, mostly around an 18 to 21 range for standard size houses. And then when we get into the bigger rooms, we're around the 21 to 24 range. And these are all zoom ranges for full frame.
Full frame, yeah. So everything should be based on full frame. In fact, to combine the questions, Mark is looking to get into real estate photography and wondering what kind of lenses to recommend. And so this all kind of wraps together, where I have had clients who told me later on, main reason we would call you back is that I would make spaces look bigger and the reason I was downtown San Francisco, where every place is small, so I was using a 10.5 millimeter lens. It's a fisheye that could get corrected, and it would show the whole room when the room is small, and it has, now for better and for worse, it has the effect of making the space look bigger. That's what happens along with the distortion Rob was talking about with the ears. It also has the impact of making it look big, space look bigger. So you sometimes, and check me if you think this is wrong, but sometimes you cannot show an entire small space without making it look bigger than it is.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
However,
So just by the nature of the wide angle lens, if you're going to include it all in one shot, it's going to look bigger. That's just how that goes.
it is. And the other thing is you also have to keep in consideration what is being distorted and where it is. So for example, if you have something that is like, see where this phone is right now, it looks huge compared to me. And that's because it is closer to the lens. So instead, if I just moved, imagine if I'm a room, okay, and you have this big table in the middle. If you're shooting here, yeah, that table's going to look distorted. If you just shoot it here, now that table doesn't look distorted. It's where you are in relation to whatever is the closest to where you are. So if you have a piece of furniture that's really close to you, that's going to get distorted. So why don't you just move a little bit off to the side, or move the furniture just a little bit more in, get rid of the thing that's going to look the most distorted, and that's going to fix what the room is going to look like.
And those are distortions of a kind that are just optics and the way that things are going to look based on the optics you're using. And then there's
like
the
kind
kind
of... coffee cup is not bigger than my head.
Yeah, things
right?
are closer than they appear. Then there's the other kind of optics that probably, he said, you can call me Bill, by the way, that he was asking about is probably the distortion that's the barrel distortion that makes the straight lines look, the straight vertical lines look bowed in and out a little bit. To me, that's all fixable now. If you shoot it level, then even if you don't shoot it perfectly, it can still be fixed. But really, if you shoot it level, the distortion that comes from the lens is really fixable just automatically in software now. So I wouldn't worry about that kind of distortion. Even the cheaper lenses, which brings me back around to someone starting out like Hark here, is don't worry about this. This goes against the normal recommendations of what kind of camera and lens to get, but you don't have to worry about getting a really good quality lens to start out in real estate, because the things that you get in a cheaper lens, just those the things that are much better in a more expensive lens don't really matter in real estate photography as much. So because yes, there'll be some more distortion at wide angles, but it's all very fixable now.
That's true. And it's
with
also
with Lightroom and other options out there, it's just that's not an option. And you also don't need that wide open 2.8 or 1.8 aperture. You don't need that. You don't want that anyway. You want to shoot it like f8 or f11, where those are usually the sweet spots of any lenses, and even cheap lenses have sweet spots. So you're probably going to get the very most out of it. Good post-processing will take care of all that. So starting out, get the lens zoom, either get the focal lengths you need, and later on, if you want to upgrade it and you're real successful, then upgrade it then.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like if you're shooting for real estate, you got to remember that a lot of these people are going to be putting these onto MLS, which is going to be small sizes. There's not going to be a lot of detail. They're not going to zoom into it. The other thing is they're going to be printing these on inkjet printers in their office, which means that there's not going to be that much detail. And even if they do get it printed on a digital press, it's not going to be a really big image. So you don't have to worry about all the sharpness that a high-end lens can get you. But
you're not going to get
with
busted.
that being said, it all depends on what you're going to be doing. If you are going to be doing this for realtors, yes, get the cheapest lens, get it used, and you'll be fine, right? You can probably find a used 16. If you're a Canon guy like me, you can get a 16 to 35 for around $300 on Kijiji or eBay or Craigslist. And use that, because after using that for a few years, you decide, well, hey, you know what? This was a good lens. I want to get into something better. You can still sell that for the same price used that you bought it for. And that's going to be great because your total output is going to be nothing. And let's jump into Glenn's comment here. How far have you stopped down your lenses to get the depth of field you desire for a room? I'm at f9, but feel I need more depth of field. Okay, so great question. All right, so you're using an AFS 10 to 24 3.5. Okay,
And
so
explain stop down just in case. We've
of
got
course.
we have people that are new to real estate photography are often not really photographers, and stop down is one of those cool old fashioned terms.
Yeah. So to start off, I'm gonna point out here that Glenn is using an APS-C size sensor, which is a smaller size sensor than a full frame sensor. So 10 to 24, you're going to be looking at an equivalent of around a let's see now, a 16 to around a 45 mil full frame lens. Now, stopping down means you take your f-stop from, say, f9, and if you stop it down, you're going to go to f8, f7.1, 5.6, 4.5, 4, 3.2, 2.8, 2, 1, all the way
And
down.
stopping down means a smaller opening, which equals a bigger number.
Opening.
No, stopping down is a smaller opening.
So stopping down.
Stopping down.
Okay.
So stopping down would be this is one of those great things. I know this is one of those great things. The ways I had to remember these things for a long time is crazy. Like, so if you
You're right.
It would be the opposite. Would be opening up.
It's the opposite.
And then the okay. So I'd like to throw out my way of remembering this is the smaller number, the smaller the number, the less depth is the way I like to remember it. So a small number means big opening. That's hard to remember, but small opening means more depth. So yeah, stopping down enough to get the depth of field. Yeah,
you're right. Okay, so Glenn, to answer your question, the way that we stop down is we actually stop down to f13, and the reason we like f13 is
11 here. 11.
You're 11. Okay,
yeah.
F13 for us when we're using a Canon 16 to 35 f4. That is the f-stop where, if you look at any light, it is where the light turns into a star rather than just a blurry circle. Mm-hmm. And it is the nicest looking star on that lens. And we want to keep it as open as we can because, of course, the more open it is, the faster our shutter speed is, and the less time we have to wait behind the camera for the shutter to finish, especially when we're doing 5 stops. F13 seems to hit that sweet spot where it looks the best and it is as open as we can get while still keeping those stars. So, but the other thing is, if you're on an APS-C size sensor, that will affect it as well. So what I always suggest is play with your lenses, and you go into a room where there's some lights. Do this at night. Shoot it wide open at 3.5 and go 3.5, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 11, 13, 16, 22, and see where in that range you start getting those really nice stars, and choose that as being your perfect f-stop.
I think it's like so many questions so many questions start with it depends in photography, and that there are so many factors. I was just thinking to myself, does a smaller sensor mean you need more stop down, more or less? I don't even know the answer to that, but the best answer is that it's going to be different with your sensor, your lenses. Is there anything else? Anyway, experiment like Rob said, because I think the answer is going to be different for every combination, camera lens combination, if I'm right. So definitely try that out. I've landed on f11 that works for so many situations. So I don't have like a glob of a light. I have a star of a light, but it's not a pinpoint star either. And because I want to stay in the sweet spot of the lenses, which once you start going out past 11, depending on the lens again, you start to get out of the sweet spot. So that's one reason. So there's a lot of factors there. So like so many things, experiment around with it and find the one that works best, and go from there.
Yeah. The neat thing is when you're starting out with this kind of business, you're going to have a lot of time, and you're going to have 80% of your time you're going to spend perfecting your trade, going out finding clients, and only 20% of the time actually doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And as you get more busier, you're going to be doing 80% of the time doing the work, 20% of the time doing the administration, and 20% of the time trying to figure out what the hell you're doing. So at the very beginning, yes, you have this 80% of time where you can experiment and find what works best for you. So spend that time. And if you find yourself sitting on the couch or at the dining room table thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? I've got nothing to do today. Stop. You've got lots to do. This is a time where you actually have to develop your trade. And so I don't care if you've shot your living room 50 times already, shoot it more, shoot it 100 times, and change your settings. Get to the point where you feel like you can nail every single living room, no problem. And that includes doing that with the distortion stuff. And as well, Kevin's got a good question here. What is your recommendation?
I wanted to hit just so we don't keep going and miss questions. And as the comments go down, we'll go back. We love talking about those things. Don't worry, we're going to go right back to those too. But we get
Paolo's. Yeah.
I want to get Paolo's. He said, Paolo from Italy, right on. Man, I want to travel again. If we get a chance to lament about the year, that's one of them. How can you not make the logo or the halos in the merged images? So I get this, this question is unfortunate because there's no reason to have halos, and I'll give you a couple tips here in a second, but people still think that this HDR has halos all the time. Hey, you can get halos for sure, but there's no reason you need to be stuck with them. And it doesn't take elaborate post-processing like some people are showing. So let me just do a quick share again. This is a real estate property I shot. No, I'm kidding. It's not. It's just it was just something I grabbed that I have on my hard drive right now that can show halos very easily. So when you do the capture, let's go all styles here. So halos look like this. They're this is kind of minor. Those. Is that the kind of halos you mean, by the way, Paolo? Like especially along rooftops. There's like a lighter halo, but they come with extreme settings that are so easy to avoid. There's so many. I'm just going through presets right now. I'm not even playing with my own settings, but there's so many just straight up presets that don't have halos. So one thing I recommend straight off is just try various kinds of settings when you're in Photomatics. If you're doing batches, then try out loading a single set here and there, and just play with the settings and maybe use different ones than you had been using. So that's one thing, is just try other settings. Now, more specifically, one reason that halos come up is that it happens when not capturing the entire dynamic range well. So I'm not an engineer, I'm a photographer, but what I think is happening anyway, this could be wrong, is that it's just trying to recover so hard that it doesn't have the information it needs. So if you really cover the dynamic range well, then I think you'll see halos largely disappear. There's a common myth that I love to bust that says, I take 3 images, this whole thing about a properly exposed and then over and under 3 images, to me is silly. If anybody would like to, we can go further into it, but meter for the highlights, meter for the shadows, capture everything in between. That's how you make sure you have everything. It could take 5 shots at 2 EV spacing. It could take 9 with 1 EV spacing, but cover the whole dynamic range. That's one way to avoid halos from the get-go. The other one that's really easy is I was mentioning try other settings, and there are lots of settings that'll work, but something specific I can tell you is to use Fusion, and you can use just turning up, getting some. You can use Fusion, which is up here on the top left. You can also use up here on the top right the real estate section that has a lot of natural looking results semi-automatically. Okay, so several ways to avoid halos. If there's follow-up questions, let me know, but let's go back to real estate specific. Okay, back. We wanted to go to the white balance one, right, Kevin?
Yeah, with Kevin.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kevin, the only thing I can say about this one here is, what is your recommendation on white balance settings? Quite frankly, I just use auto white balance. And if you want to learn more about how I auto correct or fix shoot, what am I trying to use? Color contamination.
Oh, contamination, yeah.
Yeah. If you want to fix color contamination, go back to some of our previous talks. We got one where I've actually gone through a sample of how we process. And so take a look at that video, and it'll take you through the entire process of how to fix all of that. And it's super simple.
Yeah, Rob has a a pretty brilliant way of using a flash shot to get the color, and then use a blending layer, and then so it's advanced in many ways. So, or in a couple of ways. You have to be good with Photoshop and layers, and even know what a blending layer is. But I know, but and using Flash, those are kind of advanced. But there are a lot of other things. Believe me, Kevin, I've been fighting this for years. I've tried all the different solutions over the years, because not only multiple. Okay, so what Kevin's asking, by the way, is when you have different kinds of light sources in one room, and normally that's going to be the sun coming in, and it's going to be a man-made, like a tungsten light that on the interior that doesn't match with the sunlight. So you get this color confusion or contamination, and not only I started out doing 360s, where if there are different light sources on the other side of the room, those are going to be in there too. They're all going to be in there, and it's a big disaster. So a lot of it ends up being you can compromise with auto. You can do some local adjustments. There are other tricks like I like experiment around, and these are those things where you have to find where your mileage may vary and what works best for you. One of the options would be auto white balance with different. When you set auto white balance and take brackets in most cameras, it's going to set one, and it should choose one white balance and shoot the bracket all with one white balance. But in Lightroom, and probably other editors too, if you select a set of images and choose auto on the white balance, it'll choose a separate white balance for each one. So a lot of times that can help with the compromise. So then when it combines those 5 images or 9 images or whatever, then the ones that have have a black interior and are showing the exterior have the white balance for the exterior, and vice versa. So you can combine them that way too. In the end, I usually end up brushing a little bit, at least in one area, because one of them is going to be too blue or one of them is going to be too hot, and you end up doing a brush correction. You can do a brush correction in Lightroom and post-processing. You can do it in Photomatics if you're doing a single set. A lot of options there. So what I'm saying is a lot of options there. and he loves the product, by the way. Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Hark.
As a newbie?
Yeah. What should I focus on first? Going to practice on my own home, angles, distance, depth, etc. Yes, all of it. Essentially, it's this. it's like any trade. You know, you're not going to get good until you've done 10,000 of something. So what that means is shoot your house 100 times. And I'm serious about this. Just go in, shoot it over and over and over again. And each time,
Make
compare what you've
mistakes.
done first time to second time. And you'll
Hmm.
see it's like, oh, I like, because we're humans. As soon as we see two things, we're going to compare them. And we're going to say, well, I like this one because of this one because of this. I like this part of here, this one part of here. And you're going to start criticizing your own work to the point where you start noticing the things that are good and the things that are bad. And that only
Hmm.
happens once you start doing it a
Yeah.
lot.
Hmm.
And as well, with that, also look at Instagram, look at other people's work, and just keep on looking. See what you like about them, see what is different from what they've done to what you've done. And you just, if you are at that point where you're like, well, that picture is better than my picture, that's not good enough. You have to really dissect it and say,
Then I start asking why.
yeah,
Hmm.
like I love how the light looks here. I like how moody it is. Well, what creates that mood? Is it
Yeah.
because it's darker here and lighter here, or is it because they turned on the lights, they didn't turn on the lights? Whatever it is, figure that out.
Is it cleaner? Is it simplified? You'll start. This is a big rabbit hole, the photography thing. You'll start getting into finding that like I find that the more I simplify, the better my photos are. So, like it's not in real estate photography, but they say if you're someone, I wish I could give credit. Someone said if you're this is either Rick Salmon or Chris Marquardt. I'm not sure. If your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough. I think it was what it was. So zoom in. It means simplify. Simplify your subject matter. So in real estate photography, that might be in the kitchen. Well, besides cleaning, like some real estate photography, the places aren't ready for you. So there can be moving of things. There's a little bit of a so maybe we'll talk about architecture. So a couple questions in the comments about architecture, but to me, that's a big difference. Is architectural photography. One of the differences is that you have more time to prepare, and the expectation is that you'll move furniture to improve your composition of the image, where you're probably not taking that time in real estate. There are other things, of course, that are different too, but simplifying real clean images. That color question we had, getting the color balance correct, is a huge difference. And I just want to throw out one tip when you're doing that, is to use one of those things that we mentioned before, like your phone to tether, so that you can see the image ahead of time, because seeing an image as the final, similar to how the final image will help you notice the problems there. Looking through a viewfinder, in my experience anyway, I tend to miss things. I miss things around the edges. The composition doesn't look the same. If you're using a real viewfinder, it's actually like using your eye, because you're looking through the lens. You're not looking at a two-dimensional image, so it's different. So
Mm-hmm.
right when you're shooting, if you're using like a phone or a cam ranger or whatever to pre-visualize that, you'll see ahead of time what it's going to look like, instead of looking at it during processing later. So the learning will go faster.
Yeah.
So just do it. Make the mistakes. Do palm, face palm yourself many times to go, oh, I missed this, I missed that, and you won't miss it next time. That's a big key, I think.
Yeah. You know what? You gotta fall a bunch of times before you get good at it. And
The
it's yeah.
the one thing about if you're talking about depth of field, one thing about that is that's one of the things in real estate photography. You can kind of set it and forget it a lot of times. You can set it to F11 or F13 or F8, whichever one you decide on. And if
Mhm.
you, we could talk maybe better to Google or grab an app for hyperfocal distance. Write that one down. If you set your lens at a certain focus setting, then everything's everything is always in focus. One of my lenses is that I use for 360s has tape over the focusing ring, because I never have to move the focus. I put it on my camera. I set it to F11. I know that everything will always be in focus, as long as it's not closer than, I forget. It's been so long since I sent it, but it's only a few inches. So
Oh, and if anyone has a lens out there that has image stabilization and you're on a tripod, just turn it off. That's one thing that it took me 2 years to learn before I realized why some of my images didn't really line up in Photomatix.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because as soon as the first image hits, the shutter goes down, and that's just enough vibration to activate the image stabilization, moves the sensor up just a little, or moves the lens just slightly for the second image, and then the third image is back. And
Interesting. I've
so,
never seen that. Okay.
yeah,
Good one.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, why is this image blurry while this one's not? And I kept on thinking that I kicked the tripod or something while we were doing it, or I had my hand still on the. No, it was just image stabilization.
I've had I've had
Um,
I've had something like that where when I did lens correction in Lightroom, I guess it would have been, I didn't synchronize all of them. So I couldn't figure out why it wasn't lining up right
yeah.
because the lens correction changed it just enough that there was a little blurriness.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, oh,
So
Kevin talking about those, see Rob.
sorry, Kevin.
Try-
Unless you want to light it, you're kind of stuck with that. But okay, so Bill has a good question here. Now that we know how to pronounce his name.
65.
No, the one at 1136, a couple above.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you
so,
usually get architectural photography jobs too?
and what changes in the workflow, equipment, and mindset? Okay, so this is a very good question. So,
Yeah.
well, for example, I just had a client where all I needed to do was one exterior shot of this building. And this one shot I charged $450 for. And essentially what it took was for me to go out there, find the right space, set up a tripod, and take the exterior of the building. Now, the mindset is different because where you place that tripod is so important because you have to compose it absolutely 100% correct. The timing of the shot was incredibly important because I had to make sure that it was at the right time of day because
As
let's
opposed to real estate where you're typically you can't
you go
choose
when you're
because
cold.
you're going when you called or your schedule dictates you're shooting 4 houses in a day, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for this one, I knew checked the weather report, found out when it was going to be a nice day. They wanted we wanted to do it sort of at a twilight, and I'll actually put this picture into the Facebook comments later. But we took the shot, and then as we're taking the shot, we also did something a little bit different. We took we did, well, how do I put this? We took one HDR shot to get the overall image. We then took a whole bunch of shots beforehand that were set at different shutter speeds to get people blurry into the shot. And then we
Love
photoshopped all
that.
those into the HDR shot. Then what we did was we took everything that's in the HDR shot that we didn't want, like there were construction pylons all over the place. There was a homeless guy that was by the building. There was a shopping cart that was down the street that we didn't notice at the time of the shoot. All this other stuff that is just not necessary in the shot. There was a big crack down the concrete in
Yeah.
the road. So we Photoshop all of that out. Then we Photoshop in all the moving people into it. Then we change the sky out so that it looks even better. And then we tweak the colors a bit. So that one shot that I charged $450 for, it took me 2 hours on site to get the shot, and it took me another 2 hours at home to actually get processed. And so all in all,
And preparation, like researching the time. Maybe
right? And
did you visit this? Did you visit it first ahead of time to
no,
make
thankfully,
that?
they actually had me go there beforehand to do lobby shots and stuff like that. So the same thing with that. But this one shot, yeah, because I knew where it was, I didn't have to do that research. But if I did, I would have charged for that time as well. But altogether, you're still making some good coin for one shot. And in terms of gear, the gear does change. So instead of using a 6D, which is a 20 megapixel camera, I used a 5DSR, which is a 50 megapixel image. Because when you're photoshopping that much detail, it's better to have higher resolution so they can get everything perfect. And And as well, in terms of the lenses, what lens did I use? I still think I used my 16 to 35 f4. I also had with me though at that time a 21 mil Zeiss, which is a fantastic lens. It's super sharp, and had my composition been within that 21 mil range, I would have probably used that lens just so that I could get that little extra bit of sharpness to make it work. The third thing that I did differently was I changed the settings on the camera because I wanted to have the perfect shot. So, like I was saying before, turn off the image stabilization on the lens, but as well, to make sure that that shutter doesn't actually create any blur, I use what's called mirror lockup. And so what that does is inside the DSLR, it pulls up the mirror first, then the shutter goes, and then the mirror comes down. So that little shake of the mirror doesn't shake the sensor and create a blurry image. So yes, the workflow changed there too. So mirror lockup, image stabilization's off. I think I used 7 brackets just to make sure I don't get any halos. And
just cover the dynamic range.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think I actually weighted down my tripod as well.
I really like the conversation of comparing real estate and architectural photography, and I would love anybody to add things or say I'm wrong, but I think all those things, there's a different expectation level. So all those things Rob's talking about, I think there's higher importance in art, in the composition of it, building depth through lighting. There's a more detail oriented, meaning detail shots. So showing the texture of a certain wall, just depending on what on the features of that property. So showing more of the features of that property. Real estate is showing what you got. Here it is. Post it. This is the house. Architectural is, I think it's more of an art form, is kind of what it comes down to. I'm looking for ways of making that more succinct. I think there's more art involved in architectural. So I'd love people to challenge that and see. I don't know if I'm really right or not, but
well, the other thing is, I've also looked at it this way, where with real estate, it's quick, it's fast, and it doesn't last. So, for example, one shot from a real estate shoot will be on the market for what, 30 days, and then it's gone, and you're never going to see it again. Whereas with a architectural shoot, that's going to be on the portfolios of the architect or the builder or the company for years, and so there is a big need. So
it often begins with, what is this going to be used for? That's a lot of what. Yeah.
Now I am going to and let's see now. Here it is. Here's that image that I was talking. Actually, this is a different image that I did a while ago, but it's the same kind of thing where you see I had to get the right time of day, and then all these people that are in the foreground, those were shot earlier, and they were all photoshopped in. And because this was a new construction, there were tarps and pylons all over the place there, and we had to get rid of all of them. Yeah. So there's that.
Very nice.
Oh.
Yeah, they're a different. It comes from, real estate versus architectural. Yeah, you can start with what is it going to be used for, so the purpose could define the other details. And this is a good example of that, is that it probably wasn't even ready to photograph, but you had to make it happen. So that's another thing, is you have to find a way to make that happen as the pro, right?
Now, you know what? Let's go back to the comments here. We've got 2 here that are actually really good.
August.
Yeah. So August, I found realtors to be price shoppers. Yes, they are, and so they should be, because if you really think about it, they're not really making that much money. And
explain that. I think most of us have a different impression.
Okay, so if you think about it, I don't know what the rates are for you guys down there. Up
Six.
6%. Okay,
I think
so
that's the rule of thumb, right?
okay, so if it's six
And
percent up there,
mhm.
then what you've got is let's see. I'm just going to stop the screen here. Okay, so if you've got 6%, then half of that goes to the buying realtor. So the
Right.
selling realtor makes 3%, and of that 3%, a good portion of that, say a third of that, goes to their brokerage. So now you're down to 2% that they've got
Mhm.
left. So if you've got, say, $100,000 place, that's $2,000 that they're making. And if you think about photography and the advertising, the measurements, everything that goes into it, if those costs come out to say $400, $500, it's gambling. You're gambling $500 to make $2,000.
August, where are you?
So
Because so Rob's basing this on $100,000 house, which doesn't exist in my area.
no, and that's exactly it. So, but at the same time, you also have to price yourself based on what your market is. So if
Okay.
the average house sells for $100,000 in your area, you're probably not going to be able to sell photography for more than $100.
Yeah, but
If your place is
your own house is a fraction of. I mean, it's all relative to the area because if a normal house sells for 100,000, then and
yeah,
that might be the house that you own or shopping for, or you're renting something that. So your own house and mortgage will be appropriately sized.
really. So now, if you get into a place where you're shooting like $4 million places, again, that they can charge more for the photography. But one of the things that we have to realize is that we have got to stop thinking about price as the main way to compete, because
Hallelujah.
there's always going to be somebody that's going to be cheaper than you. So, like I was saying at the very beginning of this show, it's all about the service. So you will probably go to a restaurant that is a little bit more expensive, but if the service is fantastic, you're going to keep on going back because you like the people, you're going to like their food, and you're going to have a relationship and an expectation of what you can get. And if you focus more on that, it won't matter if there's a guy that's coming up that's cheaper than you, because that relationship is going to be more important, and people are going to be more willing to stick with you because they feel that they can trust you. So definitely focus more on that rather than price. If someone says, oh well, so and so is cheaper, then say, yeah, go for it. There's always going to be somebody cheaper.
How much this is my own question. How much of that quality and is quality of photos? So the consistency they can expect from you. How much
Mm-hmm.
is that quality versus your availability, willingness, and speed? And so they can expect how much of it is the quality of the product they're going to get versus they know if they call you that the next day or whatever you agree they're going to have them.
Mm-hmm.
How much was it? Like would they like
Well,
okay, the
it's all the
restaurant that
service,
has
right?
good food or good service, one or the other. What about the photographer that has good photos versus consistently there and delivers, even if the
You know what?
photos are
You can be the
mediocre?
best damn photographer in the world, but if your service sucks, you're not going to make it.
Yes.
It's better to be a better business person than it is to be a better artist. And I know that sounds bad, but
Mhm.
you have to be good at the service side because we are humans and we are part of a society, and we need to have relationships with our clients to be able to work. And so
Yeah.
we should always look at it this way. We should look at it as build the relationships and nurture those relationships, and your work will get better because of it, because you want to create better photos and better products so that it serves your relationships better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think in real estate we at least if you're listening to online forums and Facebook groups, man, the expectations are high for the quality of your photos. But for your customer, that's not always the highest priority for them. A lot of times it's just that I just need them tonight or tomorrow, and they can be imperfect. And if they even, I don't want to sound snobby here, but even if they know a good photo from a bad one, that's one thing. They might not, they really just, they've got a system going. They've got to get that flyer printed. They've got to have it ready for this open house or this event. They just need it. So that is one thing. We talk about the photography part all the time, and we're not going to stop. But it's important to remember that they don't have to be perfect. That's kind of not the business we're in.
No, exactly. And that just goes to like Virgil's question here, business question. What's your top tip for gaining customers? That is a great question because, again, it's if you have
there's his top tip.
under promise, over deliver. Definitely. But if you think of so Virgil's question was business question. What's your top tip for gaining customers, either as new entrants or influencing buyers to choose you? The biggest one is asking people for a Google review, asking people for a reference. And I've done this a lot of times where it's like, hey, what do you think of the photos? They're like, oh, these are fantastic. It's like, oh, perfect. Hey, do you mind if I send you a link to give me a 5-star Google review? That will really help me out. And they'll say, yeah, sure, no problem. It's like, that's awesome. And, if you've got if there's anybody in the office that's looking for a photographer, just please send them my name.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about, I think this answer depends on your position. If you're already a busy working photographer is one thing. If you're not, is another thing. If it's a downtime is another thing. I've been just on myself. I'm just starting the new year by offering some deals to because I'm in a new area and I'm kind of re-entering the market myself. And so what I'm doing is offering a free Matterport tour because I just started doing Matterport. And frankly, I need the samples and the experience, so it works for me too. So if you're ever giving anything away, make sure that it works for you. Make sure that if you're going to do a free shoot altogether, which is perfectly fine sometimes, if you're to say, I just want a chance with you and your organization, if it works for you, offer something free. If you decide to offer something free, make sure you get something back from them saying that the free offer is for a staged home only. So that you have samples. So make sure you're getting something out of it that is a little bit more than just a shot. Usually, maybe you just want a shot because it's worth it. Because if you get them, they're going to be calling you back for a long time. But Rob comes from he's already got a working business. So,
but at the same time, if you work with those relationships, like let's think about it. If you have a friend that opened up a restaurant, you're going to recommend that restaurant to everybody else that you know. And it's that same kind of mentality that works for your clients. If they like you, they will refer you. And so work on those relationships and that will get you more business, hands down.
Yeah, I agree. The relationships during a time when you're able to, I know it's a great way, especially if you're selling yourself, if you're like Rob over there that just everyone just likes, then go do presentations at the offices in your area. That I know a lot of people are even in there teaching their competition, helping them with their photography, so that a lot of the agents are doing their own photography, but it works for them because they're also a photographer for that group, and it works for everybody. I recommend to not be afraid to train your competition because you are the expert. And you'll be surprised how few people go learn something and actually put it into practice. It's more likely that they'll just end up calling you to do it anyway. I see that a lot.
I've done it over and over again. It's and I still do it right now. Where if anybody likes, contact me directly. I do mentoring for other photographers and on how to do my entire process, plus stuff that I haven't actually shared on this show.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone's interested, I've got a few people that have been calling me, and we've been doing some good mentoring stuff.
I can vouch for him. He'll go deep down photography rabbit holes if you want to.
Oh yeah, Now, what was that last question that you had up there?
Yeah, this is one of those questions that we could be here
Oh,
all day talking about. But yeah, what do you got?
okay. So we touched on this like on one of our first episodes, and with charging, I always go about it this way: what is my time worth? And then I double that, and then I just set it as an hourly. So, for example, if I say, I want to make 100 grand a year, if I was working in a regular corporate office, that would be $50 an hour, based on 40 hours a week, or based on 50 hours 50 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, $50 an hour works out to 100 grand. So $50. So if I want that, I have to double it, because half my time is going to be spent doing all the other administrative stuff that I usually would, if you're working for a company, somebody else would be doing, right? But because I have to do that admin stuff, my own travel and all that, you double it. So I'd be charging $100 an hour. So if I'm charging $100 an hour, I take a look at a shoot and I say, well, it takes me an hour. It takes me half an hour to go out there. It takes me around half an hour to shoot, half an hour to drive back, and maybe half an hour to process everything. So all in all, I'm looking around 2 hours. I'm going to charge $200
Canadian.
and that's reasonable. You've justified it. And once you've done that, then if somebody says, well, I've got two houses that are side by side, will you give me a discount? It's easy to go in and say, yes, well, it's a half an hour there, half an hour on site, per house, half an hour per house for processing, and then a half an hour to drive back. So I'm actually saving an hour there. How about I give you $50 off, right? And they'll be ecstatic. But you've justified it to yourself. You justified it to them. Everybody's happy, and it works. Now, here's the interesting thing. You'll never be able to increase your prices later on. So set that price right now, however you want. And as you get better at doing this, what's going to happen is that half an hour on site is going to turn into 20 minutes on site or 15 minutes on site. That half an hour drive, I hate to say it, but once you get really used to a city, you're going to know how to travel from one place to another using back roads, back alleys, and not have to actually hit traffic. And so that half an hour commute is going to be even less. As you get busier, you're also going to get to the point where your shoots are not half an hour apart. You're going to be able to start scheduling them so they're only 10 minutes apart. You're going to get better at doing all of this. And as you get better at doing all of that, you're going to find that you're going to be doing more shoots in less time. Ergo, you're going to be making more money per hour.
I want to throw in one thing that this 2020 quarantine thing washes away so many things and gives you the opportunity to change your prices if you want to. Believe me, when you start going to restaurants again, the prices are going to be higher. Trust me on this. And this is a chance to where kind of everything gets forgiven in a way. So this is your chance, because I agree it's hard to raise prices, at least on current existing customers. But maybe what I've done when the rare times in my photography business that I've changed my prices, that I don't raise them on existing customers. If they call me back, then they just get the same prices. I don't even mention the whole issue. It just happens. And with real estate photography, you're doing more jobs for less amount. So your system is important. You want a very simplified process where there's not a lot of billing and details in the billing, and let's call it nickel and diming just to make it extreme. Like if you find a pricing that works for you with $200 with the option of a Matterport for $350 or whatever it is, just keep it so simple that your real estate customers are just the payment system is simple, so you're not chasing down money. Those are the things you want to avoid. So if you feel like if you're making concessions, like you could be charging more here, you could be charging more there, keep in mind that once you start doing that, the complexity of it makes your cash flow go down, because then you're explaining and you're chasing and you're negotiating. You don't want to do any of that. I know a lot of people that don't even use any kind of contract for the real estate business, me included. You want me to do this thing? We have an agreement. It's over an email or whatever. They pay to download the results. Done and done. So keep it simple, I guess, is my whole point. But he mentioned a couple things like I've thought these things through using. Now I forgot where I lost his question, but the pricing structure, like by square footage is a decent option. You can think about 12 cents a square foot, 15 cents a square foot, 20 cents a square foot. Just think in those terms and just do the quick calculation for a few houses and see if that fits in. That way, if someone does say, I don't think it's fair, you can say, well, you can just pay by my square footage. It's just this much per square foot. So that is a one option. Just find out, just do that quick math and make sure it seems fair to you, so that for all that work you do, it seems fair.
And the other thing that I found out was this: I had a realtor ask if they would charge by square foot or by the selling price, and I said, well, it doesn't matter, because whether I'm shooting a cup or an iPhone, I'm still taking one photo. So even though this costs more than this, the photo itself and the amount of work that goes into taking that photo is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So a kitchen's a kitchen's a kitchen. And if you say it that way to a realtor, they'll say, oh, I understand, but I'm not making as much on this. Then you have to flip it on them and say, that's fine. But what you have to understand is that this house that you sell here, we're going to shoot it so good that it's going to sell. And when that buyer, when that person goes and buys the next house, they're going to use you. And when they go and sell their more expensive house, they're going to use us again and again and again and again. So we got to think long term. And sooner or later, that guy that you shot a $200,000 house for, that you thought, oh my God, these photos are expensive for, all of a sudden, you're going to be shooting, we're going to be selling their next house, which is going to be $1 million place. And you're going to say, oh yeah, you know what? These compared to the commission I'm going to be making on this $1 million place, that small fee for the photos is actually really cheap. We're going to get there.
The real estate agent should know this, but they're not hiring you to. The photos they're hiring you for a certain house is not to sell that house. The house is going to sell. Those photos are to get the next client, to show what they've done previously. That's what those photos are really for. And if they don't understand that, you should let them know that that's why you want these photos. You can't think of it as one house. It just just kind of going through some of the questions, because hey, the Rob Moroto and Ron Pepper discussions tend to go long, but in about 15 minutes, and we'll get out of here, because I've got hungry people around here, hungry big and small ones. Virgil, technical question. What's your opinion about using vintage lenses, like pre-war? Like, wow, I don't even know that one. I don't know that particular one.
I love them.
Which one? What does that one? What does that one do? The Lights Wetzler. Oh, Lights. When I said it out loud, okay. When I said it out loud, I recognize it.
Okay, I love them. I don't use them, and here's the reason why. And I know this is going to sound really bad, but we are not doing this because we're artists. We are doing this because we are commercial photographers. We are producing a product. I would love to use some of the vintage lenses for my art stuff, which is going to be very different. Not for real estate commercial, not for commercial stuff though.
Well, I mean, I have a regular lens, just happens to be sitting here, that's a long zoom, which I love, but I don't love it for real estate. So, I mean, how many of you guys out there, I don't know, raise your hands on your own, I'm a photographer, and I've done a lot of real estate in my life, and I'm trying to get back into it again now, but I'm a photographer. So those things there's a million great things out there for all the different uses, but for what this particular real estate thing, I don't think so. I mean, lens babies, and he asks about tilt shift, which does have some, has a use for real estate, but just to make, I don't want to go too down another rabbit hole, but there's no need for it anymore. And the reason is that you can zoom out a bit and you can make the same effect in post-processing, so it makes it really unnecessary. Now, for artistic things, maybe for high-end architecture, again, might be a different story, but for real estate, they're expensive, they're prime, so they're not flexible. The learning curve, I don't know if it's high exactly. I think it's a little bit high, but just unless you have something to add, Rob, I think you can do the same thing without it now. So I don't recommend it for now. unless
The only time that I use a tilt shift now is for weddings.
for effect, right? For
Yeah,
cool.
for that shift effect.
Yeah, there
Oh,
are yeah.
yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm going to throw a little nugget here for any of you that are actually doing weddings this coming year. I just did one in December that was fantastic. So completely off topic, but if you're doing weddings, try this. We had a couple that wanted to get married in December because it was 12 is their magic number, and so they wanted to get married on the 12th day of December. All right. The thing is, with COVID, all restrictions were shut down. We can't do anything. So what we did was we got I had what four cameras, three cameras going, and we did a huge Zoom meeting, just like what we're doing here. Set up the lights, got them, park in the background, big monitor right behind the officiant, and so that the bride and groom can actually see everyone that's there. We had guys that were there that were in their pajamas. We had people there where they're looking at their phone, but they didn't realize that their camera was on, and they're shooting their crotch the entire time. It was fantastic. But we did a Zoom meeting wedding, and I got paid to set up all the lights, do all the Zoom stuff. Paid extra for the fact that I was using my cell phone data to stream everything. Plus, I got paid to do the photos of the ceremony and their formals. And quite frankly, it was just the four of us, essentially, me, bride and groom, the officiant, and 100 people on Zoom. So try that.
Man, where do you find the time for everything that you do? Oh boy.
Lots of coffee.
Yeah, I guess. I learned the hard Chip Bazillion. That's not a real name. That's not a real name, is it? That's like a poker player or a gambler right there. Chip Bazillion. I learned the hard way. It was better as an artist. I was better as an artist and lost business to marketers who photos. Yeah. I mean, there are legit markets for different things. And there's one of those things I always need to remember myself is that don't try to be everything. If you have an artistic area, like I have artistic areas, I have non-artistic areas, and real estate's a good business. It's not artistic. It's fine, right? People, a lot of real estate photographers who are photographers add add an artistic edge to it, like with detail shots and maybe some other things, but it doesn't have to be that way.
No, and the biggest thing is being an artist, being a marketer, be a better person, and just smile, be nice, and be a friend to all these clients, and that is what's going to get you more business.
Yeah. Rob has a lot of has given us tips over the times we've been doing these, and I'd recommend Zoom. Maybe fast forward through some of the old ones we have on the Facebook facebook.com/hdrsoft, the videos. Anyway, he's had a lot of really great recommendations for really mostly for maintaining clients, I think, more than building them. But that's the same thing, isn't it? Word of mouth is amazing. So.
Yeah.
Let's see.
There was a point early on where I had one of my clients say to me, it's like, yeah, I don't know what to do. I'm conflicted because I have people in my office that want to know where I'm getting their great photos from, and I want to say it's you, but I also don't want them to know it's you because I am in competition with them. And I said, well, no, you're not.
In their own office? Oh, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I said, no, you're not in a competition. You have to show that, yes, you're using me as a photographer, but you also want your office to succeed, because as the office succeeds, the more people are going to come to your office as well. And as soon as I said that, she's like, you know what, that's a good point. And I got 4 new clients because of that right away. It's fantastic.
Love it. I just put this up there. You're welcome, Virgil. He says, I have a huge library of the vintage lenses, so I'm jealous.
Technical. I have a shelf full of lenses that I don't use and I can't sell. And unfortunately, I should never have bought them because I that could have gone to my kids' university or college
Yeah.
fund.
Yeah. Just keep them in your own, put them in the background for videos. That's what a lot of photographers do.
Right? And that's it. They're
Post
props.
post processing versus shooting it right. Best
Post
choice.
process.
Well, what's that?
Post process.
Post process. Well, I
Yeah.
was gonna say as you're out doing it, they're going to converge. You're going to make
Mhm.
both. In fact, they're so much going to converge that they're going to do one of those where you're going to start making sure that you do certain shooting because you know you're going to do certain post, and you're going to do certain shooting that saves you certain post, and vice versa. You're going to do certain posts that saves you. So they're going to very much go together. So think of it as one web.
Yeah. The way that I look at it is this: it's like cooking. Okay, if you know what meal you're going to cook, you know what ingredients to get at the store, and so while you're at your shoot, get the right ingredients so that when you cook it all later, it's going to come
And
out perfect.
I'm going to expand that one to say, let's say you get the right amount of ingredients, so you're not overspending. Like you don't want to
Yeah.
buy too much ginger. That stuff's expensive if you're just going to use a tiny little piece of the root. So that's just going to be, actually, I'm glad you asked that question. That's something that over the first some number of shoots, you're going to develop, and you'll never stop developing. And just the changes might happen more slowly, but you're going to find that, we're here as people that use a ton of bracketing, and I for interiors, that process saves me a ton of effort later. Even if I'm going to combine it with things we've talked about, even if I'm going to combine it with lighting and stuff, that they all work together. In fact, here we go. That's a perfect timing. I just noticed. Always use flash or flambient. How much does it impact your workflow?
Well,
For flambient, I still start with bracketed, and I use fusion, and so that so-called ambient shot. And I think most of the guys that are doing flambient do this, is they already combine a bracketed set for that ambient shot, and then use the flash for very deliberate reasons that we won't go down that rabbit hole today.
well, Bill, if you want, contact me, and I can show you how we do all our photos, and maybe that's a good workflow for you because
It's just one of those things that that conversation about how to use flash, if and how and when, it will go on forever, and that's cool. That's part of what we were just talking about, is you can adjust your shooting to. That's part of that whole conversation. Hey, Karen, I know I usually joins us. That's awesome. Thanks for being here. She was contributing in the comments that I didn't pop them all up earlier, but I wanted to go back. Kevin, any thoughts on Virtuance? That is a company that I believe they ask you to send the bracketed shots, and they do all the post for you. I believe that's what it is.
Like Box Brownie.
Yeah, I think so, but I think a more automated version. I know. I think it's fairly popular. I haven't used them yet. Their results always appear to be over processed and unnatural to me, but some agents like the overly bright, overly saturated. A lot of agents, overly bright's popular. You want to make a place look bright, and those automated. If I have this wrong, sorry, Virtuance, but if those automated results they're automated. You can't expect it to always be.
Yeah, it's a microwave dinner.
Yeah. If you're
You have
getting
no control
if you're getting an over processed unnatural look, regardless of the processing, this may not be a silver bullet to answer everything, but check that thing I was talking about earlier about covering the entire dynamic range. Don't put it on auto and do 3 brackets and think you're done. Meter for the highlights, meter for the shadows, bracket in all in between. Just takes a short amount of learning, but that is all on the HDRsoft webpage. There's tutorials about how to do the capture down to the nitty gritty details, which you don't have to follow every detail every time, but we put tutorials together that should over teach, and then you can find the details of how you're going to do it on your own. processing.
And if anyone wants to have a one-on-one mentor that doesn't know what the term stock down means, I am available for you.
These are live shows. We get to make all the mistakes. There's nothing edited. In fact, that's one reason I like that is that where what I was saying before about changing your prices and stuff for the quarantine, we have all the excuses. We just started doing this for fun, and it turned into something that seemed that people like and refer to, and so we kept doing it. But we get to make all the mistakes. If there are mistakes that you heard that we didn't correct, let us know, because Lord knows where everybody's always getting better.
And you are allowed to make mistakes. People are allowed to make mistakes. We're human.
That's right. If you don't make mistakes, you're not going to get any better.
Exactly. Now, yeah.
Virgil started collecting lenses in the 80s. Corporate, and I'll return to my first. Oh, right. Welcome back. That's cool, Virgil. He's back into photography after a long time.
And you know what? I'm going to put this out there for a lot of the guys that have been doing real estate photography for a while. You have to take time for yourself to keep your love of photography alive. If you don't, and you just keep on doing regular real estate photography, you're going to burn out, and you're going to lose that desire and that passion. And
being in the real estate photography business gives you the chance to be into photography, so you can get more interested in that tool that you have. That camera is just a tool. Like people that build something have different tools, and the camera. You'll start like I do like sports for my son's high school, just for fun and for them and for my practice and learning, and just for. Sometimes I need to get excited about photography again. So even if it's the freshman football team, it's still fun to be on the sidelines, you know?
Exactly.
And so do things that take advantage of little, offer your time maybe, and do things that expand your area in photography. It all helps. It will all make your real estate photography better. It'll make your enjoyment better. So many reasons to do all of that. Real quick, flambient is flash. Ambient is what the thing comes from. So they're combining flash and ambient. You don't need me to explain it because there are a million YouTube videos about flambient, and they'll take a different approach than I take. They'll take a very similar approach that Rob takes, and we all combine the best of all, I think. But what they're doing is they'll take an ambient shot, which doesn't work by itself, and then they'll take some flash shots for different purposes, deliberate purposes. And that can be, that can have great results. Sometimes the results are not worth all the extra time that it takes. It takes layering in Photoshop. So who was that? Was that Bill or was that Kevin? Somebody's not going to do it because it takes layering in Photoshops and blending layers. But anyway, just YouTube flambient real estate photography, and you'll get a ton of stuff. What's up, D from France?
Like I said before, if anyone wants to learn how we do it, we got a flambient method that is incredibly simple and replicable almost everywhere. And one of the things that I find interesting is that, going back to that question about virtuance, I don't like using a third-party processor because you don't have the ability to control everything that goes into the process. It'd be like me buying the ingredients for a meal and then sending it over to my neighbor to cook it and then getting it back.
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable with that. I'd rather just do it all myself, so that we keep everything in house.
But at the same time, I just want to acknowledge that's okay. That guy. Well, both of us, I guess, we know what to do for post-processing, but Rob's saying that as somebody that really knows what to do. So if you're starting out, then maybe those solutions are better than what you're doing so far. Or maybe you're really busy shooting and you want to just shoot and you want someone else to do the processing. And like we said before, your customers are happy with it. So maybe it works. So there's so many ways to do it. Now,
Just be
the
very careful. There was one guy that was in our area that did this, where he had a third-party processor. They were doing this for years, and I think after 2 years, the third-party processor vanished.
yeah, there's, oh my God. What about, people who build their entire business as a YouTuber, and then YouTube changes their way of monetizing or changes a rule, and boom, gone.
Yep.
So yeah, that's absolutely true. Now it doesn't take too much. It doesn't take too much. And I suspect there are some resources out there to teach you how to do it. I'm pretty sure that it doesn't take too much to, I'm being very facetious. Obviously, there's a lot of resources for this, to learn how to use a couple of batch processes and hopefully very quick, direct editing. So for me, I'll do some batch processes, and then I'll touch on each image just a bit. Not if it's more than several seconds, that's too much. Bang, bang, bang through them. You can do it on your own without a ton of time. And it's not going to be for perfect architectural images. It's going to be for very good, but I'll say it, imperfect real estate photos. Otherwise, I need to spend a little more time if I want to perfect it. And a little more time could be a couple minutes per photo. It could be an hour on a certain photo. So it varies greatly. But remember what we're considering. Hey, Chip, is that your real name? To me, if I sat down at a poker table and someone said, "What's your name?" I said, Chip Bazillion. That doesn't sound. That sounds like I'm going to have all your chips. Virtuance is very expensive. Okay, it can add up. It can really add up. But Rob, you're right. There are all these places on the other for us. I'm on the west coast of the U.S. and Rob's on the west coast of Canada. For us, there are processors on the other side of the world that are very inexpensive. But yeah, they might not be there, or they might decide that someone else is more important. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
What are the best workflow automation choices you've made? Well,
that is a very long question to answer.
Well, I can answer really quickly. Lightroom, Photomatic's batch plugin, post-processing Lightroom. So Lightroom, load them in, run the batch, do the quick post-process. So it doesn't happen it takes time. It takes minutes, or not hours, but it takes a while to run the processes. But I'm doing something else during the batch, and then I just touch them really quickly. So that's a very short version of that, Virgil.
There's a lot that you can do, especially if you're on Mac. So for example, one of the best purchases that I made is this mouse. And this is a Logitech programmable mouse.
There you go.
And if you think about that, think about the fact that Photoshop can do actions. Lightroom can be set to do actions. And you can do automation using Automator on a Mac. You can program a mouse to pretty much do everything.
And other programmable, I can't think of the name now. Darn it! What? There are a couple of solutions out there that are programmable. They're like not a tablet. You can use tablets is good, but they're the ones that have knobs and levers and everything is customizable, and it all works with Adobe stuff. And you can make your workflow much faster that way. That's true. That's true. I don't find them all that necessary. It's a few hotkeys.
It saves me a couple seconds.
Yeah, that adds up.
Anyways, we're at 1:35.
Yep.
So I think it's time to call it. What do you think?
Definitely. 1:30. So we always just roll through. Hey, thanks everybody for the questions. If without the questions, we would just talk for a little while and take off. But this is great. I appreciate you guys. Chip says it's a real nickname. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks, Virgil and Kevin, and thanks for coming by, Karen. How do you not know flambient? Come on, you're an experienced pro, I know. And Hark and everybody else that contributed, I really appreciate it. Follow up with so hdrsoft.com has a lot of answers and a lot of FAQs and tutorials and all kinds of things that help in these areas. You can come to our Facebook group right there, Photomatics HDR. Rob at calgaryphotos.ca, or you like robmoroto.com better for this?
Either or.
Okay.
So the calgaryphotos.ca, that is what I use for our real estate stuff, and robmoroto.com is what I use for the architectural.
Oh, very good. So this would be more, the Calgary photos would be more for this discussion. And but yeah, Rob, he's offering mentoring and things, and if you have technical or kind of general HDR photography questions, you can always write to support@hdrsoft.com. The photography questions normally go to me. Other stuff I do, I just you can go ronpepper.com. And if you don't already, be sure to go to just download and try Photomatics if you're interested. I'm going to go to, Karen's going to come up and follow you on a shoot.
Sounds good. Anytime.
All right, everybody. Thanks very much. Until next time, comment and give us questions for next time, and we'll do it again probably, in January? I want to say sometime in January.
Probably.
See how it goes. I don't know what's going to happen. Everything's going to change as soon as we say a new year. As soon as we say the number, everything's going to change, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we can only hope.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Thanks,
until
guys.
then, everyone, have a great rest of the 2020, and thank God 2020 is over. And
Yes,
here's to a better 2021.
Get out shooting. Ciao. Bye.